You know the feeling, the sudden tightening in your chest, the quickening of your breath, the thought that creeps in when you least expect it, reminding you of everything that could go wrong. Fear. It is easy to mistake fear for weakness, to see it as proof that something inside you is broken. But what if fear was not an enemy to fight, but a messenger to listen to? What if every ripple of fear in your body was a signal, not of failure, but of possibility? In quantum physics, a single particle does not simply exist in one place until it is observed. It exists as a wave of infinite probabilities stretching across space and time. And yet, when attention falls upon it, when consciousness interacts with it, that infinite wave collapses into one reality. This is the observer effect. Now imagine this. Every fearful thought is like an observation in the quantum field, a collapse of possibility into limitation, a narrowing of infinite potential into a single line of survival. Fear is the spotlight that shrinks the stage of your life. Think of two people faced with the same circumstance, a lost job, a breakup, a door closing. One sees it as the end of their security, the collapse of their worth, and they spiral into despair. The other sees it as a redirection, a chance to expand into something greater, and they rise. Same reality, different observation. You are the observer, always. And fear is nothing more than your attention collapsing waves of possibility into the smallest version of yourself. But here is the paradox. Fear is also the invitation to awareness. It reveals where your attention is stuck, where your unconscious patterns are steering your life. Fear says, "Look here, pay attention." It points you to the doorway of freedom. Joe Dispenza teaches that emotions are records of the past. Fear is your body recalling an old memory, an old survival program, and projecting it into the present. Your nervous system reacts as if danger is here, even when it's not. Fear collapses possibility into what already was, instead of what could. But when you notice it, when you pause and breathe, you shift. Awareness loosens the grip. Suddenly, you are no longer trapped inside the ripple. You are standing outside of it, watching it move across the field. And the moment you observe fear without judgment, you take back the power to choose. Fear does not disappear by force. It dissolves in the light of observation, so the next time you feel it rise in your body, do not run. Do not resist. Simply watch. Breathe. Listen. Because hidden inside fear is not your downfall, it is your compass. It is pointing you toward the very edge of your unconscious, where your next transformation begins. You are not the ripple. You are the field in which all ripples move. And awareness is the first step into freedom. The waves rise. The winds howl. Your thoughts scatter like leaves caught in the chaos of a hurricane. Fear, doubt, uncertainty, each one rushing through your body, convincing you that you are drowning inside them. But pause. What if you are not the storm? What if you are the one watching it move? In quantum physics, the double-slit experiment revealed something that changed everything. When particles were left alone, they behaved like waves, spreading across infinite possibilities. But the moment they were observed, the wave collapsed into a single point, a single outcome. Observation decided reality. This is not just physics, it is a mirror of your inner world. When fear storms through your mind, your attention becomes the observer, collapsing possibility into form. Every thought you believe becomes the slit you choose, shaping how reality appears before you. The storm does not define you. Your observation of it does. Consider this. Two people step onto the same stage. Both feel their heart pounding, both feel their throat tighten. One says, "This is fear. I cannot do this." The other says, "This is energy. My body is preparing me." Same storm, different observer, different outcome. You have lived this before. A breakup, a rejection, a moment when something you trusted fell apart. The storm came, convincing you it was the end. Yet looking back now, you see that you survived. More than survived, you grew. Which means the storm was never the truth. It was the test. Joe Dispenza teaches that your nervous system does not distinguish between an inner thought and an outer event. When you observe fear as truth, your body reacts as if the danger is real. Your heart races, your muscles tense, your field collapses into survival. But when you observe fear as energy, as sensation, as a messenger, the storm loses its grip. You do not need to fight the storm. Fighting only pulls you deeper into its winds. Instead, you step back, you breathe, you watch. And in that space, a shift happens. You realize you are not inside the storm, you are holding it in your awareness. Like the scientist watching particles move, your very act of noticing changes the outcome. Observation is liberation. Imagine standing at the center of chaos, but untouched by it. The winds still blow, the waves still crash, but you are the eye of the storm. Silent, clear, unshaken. This is the truth. You are not the fear that moves through you. You are not the doubt, the memory, the thought that screams of danger. You are the observer. And as the observer, you hold the power to decide how the storm shapes you. The storm will always come. But it is your gaze that decides whether it destroys you or transforms you. And in that choice, you find your freedom. Every feeling you carry is a broadcast. Every emotion, a signal sent into the field. You are an emitter of frequency, not metaphorically, literally. Your heart generates an electromagnetic field that extends far beyond your body. Your brain pulses with rhythmic waves, broadcasting signals into the quantum sea around you. Every thought, every emotion carries a vibration that ripples outward. Joy resonates like harmony. Gratitude radiates coherence. Love vibrates with clarity. But fear distorts the signal. It is static on the frequency of your being. Imagine tuning a radio. When the station is clear, music flows effortlessly, each note precise and beautiful. But when static enters, the melody is drowned in noise. Fear works the same way. It interrupts the harmony of your energy, leaving your inner broadcast scattered and confused. Neuroscience explains this in your nervous system. When fear arises, your amygdala sends the alarm. Cortisol floods your body. Blood leaves your higher brain and rushes into survival centers. Your field contracts. Your ability to perceive possibility narrows. Instead of symphonies of choice, you only hear one note: danger. But here is the paradox. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is simply feedback, an indicator of where your frequency has fallen out of coherence. Just as static on a radio tells you the E dial is slightly off, fear tells you that your alignment has shifted. It is not punishment, it is guidance. Think about a time you faced an uncertain future. Maybe it was losing a job. Maybe it was waiting for medical results. Fear crept in, filling the silence with noise. And yet, when you chose to breathe, to recenter, to tune your attention differently, the static softened. New ideas appeared. Solutions you hadn't seen before surfaced. Nothing outside changed, but the signal within you shifted. Quantum physics shows that coherence matters. A laser is just light, yet unlike ordinary light, its waves move in perfect harmony. That coherence allows it to cut through steel. When your emotions align, when gratitude, clarity, and love replace fear, You become coherent. Your signal sharpens, your impact amplifies. Reality bends in response. Joe Dispenza often says, an elevated emotion combined with a clear intention creates coherence. It is not enough to think of the future you want. You must feel it, embody it, broadcast it as a frequency. Without emotion, intention is static. With emotion, intention becomes power. So the question is not, how do I kill fear? The question is, how do I tune it? How do you notice the static and gently return yourself to the music? The practice is simple, though not always easy. You pause, you breathe, you place your awareness on the heart. You recall a memory of gratitude, of love, of safety. As you feel it, your nervous system shifts. The static softens, your frequency rises, and in that shift, reality itself responds. Fear dissolves not because the world changes, but because you are no longer broadcasting static into it. You become a clear signal aligned with possibility. This is the truth. Emotions are not just feelings, they are frequencies. Fear is not proof that you are broken, it is static, a reminder to tune again. And the moment you do, the music of your life returns. You walk through life believing reality is solid, external, fixed. You imagine circumstances as mountains you must climb, challenges as storms you must endure. But what if reality is not an obstacle course, not a punishment, not even a lesson? What if reality is a mirror? A mirror does not punish you. It does not judge. It simply reflects what stands before it. If you scowl, the mirror scowls back. If you smile, the mirror smiles too. Reality works in the same way. It reflects the unconscious programs, the emotions, and the beliefs you project into the field. This is why two people can walk through the same world and live two entirely different realities. One sees threat everywhere, opportunities closing, people untrustworthy. Another walks the same street, yet feels supported, guided, met with kindness. The world has not changed. The mirror simply reflects back the lens through which each one looks. Neuroscience calls this the reticular activating system, the brain's filter that decides what you notice. Out of billions of sensory inputs, it highlights only what matches your internal state. Fear tunes the filter toward threat. Gratitude tunes it toward pose. Cybele again. This is not just poetic, it is measurable. Heart rate variability increases, brain waves soften into coherence, the entire system begins to hum in resonance with possibility. Imagine this, two people face the same challenge. One spirals into panic, holding their breath, mind racing, body tense. The other remembers to pause. They close their eyes, take a slow inhale, a longer exhale. Within moments, their state is different. One collapses into fear's timeline. The other enters the quantum flow. Breath is not small. It is how you reclaim your power from unconscious patterns, because you cannot think your way into coherence while drowning in survival mode. But you can breathe your way into it. This is why so many ancient traditions, from yogic pranayama to Zen meditation, place breath at the center of awakening. Breath is the meeting place of science and spirit, the nervous system and the soul, the quantum and the personal. Joe Dispenza often says, when you change your state of being, you change your reality. Breath is how you change your state. Each inhale draws you into the present, each exhale lets go of the past. And in that rhythm, the mind quiets. Consciousness expands. Here's the truth. The quantum field responds not to your frantic striving, but to your state of coherence. Fear contracts, breath opens, and when you open, you connect. to inspiration, to guidance, to timelines that cannot be accessed from panic. So what if you chose to stop chasing and start breathing? What if every time fear whispered you answered with presence? What if you trained your body to remember safety, not just occasionally but as your baseline? Because breath is not only survival, breath is creation. And when you learn to breathe into the quantum flow, you don't just calm your body, you align your reality. You live inside a sea of possibilities, a field where countless timelines exist, shimmering like unseen waves, waiting for the moment your consciousness chooses. Science calls it the quantum field. The double-slit experiment revealed the paradox. Matter does not exist as particles until observed. It exists first as waves, pure potential, infinite outcomes. And then, the moment of attention, the act of observing, collapses those waves into form. The same is true of your life. Fear narrows your observation. When you are caught in survival mode, you collapse the field into the smallest of timelines: fight, flight, freeze. You repeat the same conversations, the same cycles, the same limitations. Reality reflects not infinite choice, but your unconscious state of being. You are not punished. You are simply entangled with the frequency you hold. Here's the paradox. The field itself is infinite, but you will only ever touch the version of it that resonates with your identity. Think of two people walking into the same room. One carries fear, resentment, the belief that life is against them. Their eyes only find rejection, cold stares, imagined judgments. The other walks in aligned, breathing, open. Their gaze lands on kindness, connection, possibility. Same room, different wave collapsed. You may think reality is fixed, but reality is fluid. Every thought you think, every emotion you embody, is like the observer in the experiment, choosing what takes form. Not consciously, always, but consistently. If fear is your lens, fear becomes your world. If coherence is your state, alignment becomes your timeline. Joe Dispenza teaches that you cannot create a new reality from the same identity that created the old one. This is why affirmations alone often fail. You cannot just say, "I am abundant," while embodying scarcity. The field listens not to your words, but to your vibration. To collapse a new wave, you must first embody the new state. Here's the truth. Every moment is a collapse. Every breath is an observation. Every identity you cling to writes the next frame of your reality. And this is why fear feels so heavy. It tricks you into believing that possibility is gone, that only one narrow future exists. But when you return to alignment, through breath, through choice, through awareness, you remember there were always infinite paths. Fear blinded you. Alignment reveals them again. Imagine your life as a vast sea, each wave a potential self. Fear throws you into a single, small, turbulent current. You spin, thinking it is all that exists. But when you lift your awareness, you see the entire ocean of possibility. And with one choice, one shift in state, you collapse a different wave. This is the observer effect, not just in physics but in consciousness. Reality is not waiting to punish you. It is waiting to mirror you. So ask yourself, who are you being right now? What wave are you collapsing with your thoughts, your emotions, your identity? And more importantly, who could you become if you dared to choose differently? Because here is the miracle. You do not need to wait years for a new life. You only need to embody a new state now, and the field will follow. When you stop collapsing fear and start collapsing alignment, timelines shift, doors open, people appear. Life rearranges itself not because it suddenly changed, but because you did. And in that realization, you awaken. You believe fear is outside you. The darkness in the room, the judgment in someone's eyes, the uncertainty of tomorrow, but the Truth is subtler, stranger. Fear does not arise from the future. It arises from identity. From the fragile story you repeat about who you think you are. Fear whispers, "If this happens, I will lose myself." It ties survival to your persona, to the version of you that clings to old definitions. And when you live in that story, every challenge feels like annihilation, because your identity itself feels under attack. But here's the paradox. The self you fear losing was never solid to begin with. It was a collection of patterns, childhood imprints, memories, opinions from others that you adopted as truth. Neural pathways firing again and again until they became familiar. And what feels familiar, your brain calls me. This is why change feels so frightening. It is not the new path that terrifies you, it is the death of the old identity. Psychology calls it ego preservation. Neuroscience shows how the brain resists change to keep neural wiring intact. Spiritual philosophy calls it attachment to illusion. Different languages, same truth. Fear lives in who you think you are. Here's a simple example. Two people lose their job. One crumbles because their identity was "I am my career." Without it, they collapse. Another person breathes because their identity was never tied to position, but to possibility. Same event, different story, different self. Joe Dispenza teaches that transformation begins when you step beyond the familiar self into the unknown. When you stop being addicted to the emotions of the past identity, anger, worry, resentment, and begin embodying the emotions of the future self, gratitude, wholeness, coherence. You don't wait for evidence to change, you become the evidence. So ask yourself, who are you beyond the story? Beyond the name, the past, the failures, the roles you play, because there is a dimension of you untouched by fear, a silent witness, a timeless awareness. The part of you that notices thoughts but is not made of them, that feels emotions but is not consumed by them, that watches the rise and fall of identities the way you watch clouds drift across a vast sky. Amit Goswami once said, "Consciousness is the ground of being." This is the self that fear cannot touch, because fear belongs to time, and this awareness is timeless. Fear belongs to the body, and this awareness is infinite. The moment you shift your seat of identity from the fragile self to the timeless self, fear dissolves. Not because the world changes, but because the story no longer binds you. Here's the invitation. Stop defending the old self. Stop rehearsing its wounds. Stop collapsing your reality into the version of you that fears. Instead, step into the awareness that is already whole. From this place, fear is not an enemy, it is a signal. A reminder that you are clinging to a mask that no longer fits. And when you let that mask go, when you breathe into the formless self beneath the story, something extraordinary happens. You realize you were never fear. You were always the awareness beyond it. And in that realization, you awaken. You spend so much of your life trying to escape uncertainty. You cling to plans, to outcomes, to identities, because certainty feels like safety. And yet, certainty is a cage. Certainty keeps you repeating yesterday, rehearsing the past, collapsing your infinite potential into predictable patterns. But here's the paradox. Every breakthrough, every transformation, every miracle you've ever experienced was born in the unknown, the moment you stepped beyond the familiar, the moment you allowed life to surprise you. The quantum field, as Joe Dispenza describes, is a sea of possibility, an invisible domain where all futures exist at once. The only way to access it is through uncertainty, by stepping outside the script of who you were and into the space of who you might become. But this is where fear rises. The brain's survival wiring screams against uncertainty. Neuroscience shows that the amygdala fires when outcomes are unpredictable, sending waves of stress chemicals through your body. Fear says, stay the same, at least you'll be safe. Yet, alignment is not the absence of fear. Alignment is choosing to move with grace inside fear. To breathe when your body wants to contract. To trust when your mind demands proof. To walk forward not because you know, but because you feel the frequency of truth pulling you forward. Imagine this. Two people face the same unknown. One resists, tightening, demanding answers before moving. They collapse into worry and paralysis. The other breathes, opens, takes one step into the mystery. And in that openness, synchronicities appear. Doors open. Reality reshapes itself around their courage. This is the observer effect at work. When you embody trust, reality mirrors trust. When you embody openness, reality reveals new paths. The unknown bends not to your control, but to your alignment. Bob Proctor often said, faith and fear both demand that you believe in something you cannot see. The choice is yours. The unknown is the same for everyone, but the frequency you carry into it, fear or faith, determines which possibility collapses into form. Here's the deeper truth. Alignment is not about knowing what will happen. It is about knowing who you are while it happens. It is about choosing identity not as the fragile self that fears the unknown, but as the timeless awareness that creates within it. When you live from this place, uncertainty becomes possibility. Fear becomes expansion. The unknown becomes the birthplace of miracles. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if this opens me to something greater than I can imagine? You stop rehearsing disaster and begin rehearsing gratitude before the evidence shows up. And in doing so, you tune your frequency to the future you desire, rather than the past you fear. This is living aligned in the unknown, breathing instead of bracing, trusting instead of controlling, creating instead of repeating. And when you live this way, life becomes less about arriving at a fixed destination and more about dancing with an ever-unfolding mystery. Here's the invitation. Do not wait for certainty to begin. Step now. Step trembling if you must. Step with your heart open, your breath steady, your awareness anchored in the self that cannot be shaken, because the unknown is not chaos. The unknown is the field of all potential, and the moment you choose alignment within it, you collapse. Waves into miracles. You realize the truth. You were never meant to control the unknown. You were meant to create inside it, and that realization is freedom.